So, this year I've been giving a number of talks on thoughts that cause us suffering, but tonight I thought I'd take a little break from that and talk about the way some of the teachings the Buddha gave on the way to relate to the outside world, people, things that are going on in our lives. There are a couple of teachings that I'll be quoting, and just going over some of the basics of just attitudes to bring into our day-to-day lives, and also what kinds of attitudes tend to cause suffering for us, unnecessary suffering. So I'm going to start out by saying that if you haven't heard it, samsara is a bitch. It sucks. Which is to say that in life, no matter how well you play it, no matter how much wisdom you practice, there's going to be a lot of unwanted and unwelcome pain. The Buddha said in the First Noble Truth, we are all going to grow old. We are all going to experience sickness. We are all going to die. In addition, he said we are all going to lose the things that we love. We are all going to at times be united with things that we don't particularly want. And there is also, he went on to add, somewhat cruelly, there's just times in life where we're not going to get what we want. So that, he said, is the ground rules. We're going to eventually lose the things we love, get often the things we don't love, and we are often not going to get just the outcomes that we desire in our day-to-day lives. Of course, sometimes we will get the outcomes we want. Sometimes we will get the things we want. Sometimes we will fall in love and meet wonderful people. Sometimes great things will happen as well. But all these things on the sort of external circumstances in our lives, they are of the conditional nature. Conditional means that they are dependent on circumstances that are almost invariably beyond our total control. You can't control, for example, what other people think about you. You just can't. Most of us spend a great deal of our lives worrying about what people think about us. What do my coworkers think about us? What does my boss think about me? What does my family think about me? What does my mother think about me? What does your mother think about you? What does our father, our fellows think about me? And all these thoughts, not only, in fact, when you think about them, they don't bring any wisdom. Because even if you did know, somehow magically could reach into somebody else's mind, which you can't, but even if you could, a lot of what they think about you would be useless information, right? Even if they didn't like you, the Buddha said there are people who won't like you if you talk too much, there are people who won't like you if you talk too little, and there are people who won't like you if you talk exactly the right amount. So, even if you could know what they were thinking about you, would be basically getting a lot often of useless information. What people think changes all the time. So you would not only have to know what you're thinking about you now, you would have to know what they're thinking about you all the time. Because their thoughts change all the time. So it's a losing strategy that brings us nothing but unhappiness. The Buddha, in fact, suggested just have a spiritual foundation, a set of principles that you live your life by. That way you don't have to worry about what people are thinking about you all the time. But to move on, the externals of life, they are conditional. They're dependent on factors that are largely outside of our control. So, the Buddha listed a sort of overall schematic of the basic foundational truths of everything that's going on in the outside life. The first thing he said is that all the things we experience, they tend to change. They change often because of reasons, and we can begin to understand what those causes of the change are, but they change. And so if we make our happiness conditional upon things that aren't constant, we're setting ourselves up for unhappiness. Now, that's not to say we can't enjoy a sunset even though it's going to pass. We can't enjoy good friends even though eventually they're going to go away. We can't enjoy our youth even though it's fleeting. We can enjoy all those things, but the Buddha, of course, taught that, and I'll read you his quote, that we have to bring to these things the understanding of their transience, their impermanence, their fleetingness. There are things, by the way, that are not conditional, that we can cultivate, that will always be there. So in addition to having the right attitudes towards our external life, we also can have cultivate things, states of mind that always bring us pleasure and are not dependent upon what's going on, whether things are going well for us or things are not going well for us. But I'll talk about that a little later. So things are impermanent. That's one of the first foundational truths. Things tend to be disappointing if we attach to them because they are changing. Now, if we don't attach to them, if we enjoy them for what they are, then they are not disappointing. But if we rush into our relationship with friends, say, with the hope that all those friends I have on Friendster, that they're going to bring me that lasting happiness, that sense of completeness, that wholeness that I've been looking for all my life, that sense of purpose. If that's where I'm going to get it, obviously I'm setting myself up for a sad disappointment. So that's what the Buddha called the truth of dukkha, which is that many of the things we attach to for that sense of purpose and happiness and peace of mind, if we're looking for those, if we're looking for it there, we're looking in the wrong place. Again, we can enjoy those things, but enjoy them with the understanding that our true sense of inner worth are not to be found in external situations. And the third thing is that they're beyond our control. We can't control other people. We can't control the fact that we're growing old, that the body has its own pace and agenda that is often beyond our intervention, that the stock market, as much as we would want it to always go up and up, and our whatever money we have to always increase, doesn't always do that. So, and instead to bring an understanding of the true nature of things so that when we enjoy these external things, our careers, our friends, our relationships, our hobbies, our outdoor activities, we do it all with the sense that we appreciate them, but appreciate them with a sense of knowing that they are beyond our control, they're fleeting, and the kind of happiness they can bring are limited. For example, I actually try as much as I possibly can, and believe me, I get sucked into the drama of work like anybody else, but I try to play my job like a game, which is basically, when I play cards with somebody or whatever, if I lose, whatever, I don't beat myself up over it. I understand that there's that in a card game or in a Scrabble game or whatever game you like playing, it's just simply an abstraction. It has nothing to do with the true meaning of life. It's just something that we do as a pastime. It's something that we do to enjoy, but we don't expect a game to give us a lasting sense of purpose or happiness. So I tried as much as possible to do my job well. I try to bring my full attention to it just the same way when I play a game I do. I bring my full attention. But when things go well at my job, I make sure not to fully get sucked in, to start looking for my purpose, my sense of who I am, why I was placed on this planet, where I should be. That this is what my my core truth, or however you want to phrase it, is all about. Because the Buddha said that in the Iddhipakayata, the moment you create good, you create bad. The moment you create pleasure, you create pain. The moment you create the idea of left, you create right. So the moment you create the idea of, oh, my job is great, just as certainly as you've done that, you're going to create times when your job is not great, and you're going to suffer when it's not great. So the more you attach, the more you jump onto the Ferris wheel, or whatever you want to call it, that goes up and down, the cyclone, you're strapped in there for a while. And when people, for instance, if you attach to the praise that you get from other people, the applause you get if you're a musician, the acclaim that you get if you're an artist, if you attach to that, then you are attaching to the bad reviews. Yes, Rob, the bad reviews, they can happen. The bad reviews of a performance, the bad reviews of a song that we write. People will not like everything that we do. So the more we attach to things beyond our control, the more not only we are attaching to the good, but we're also attaching to the not so good, which will inevitably occur. The Buddha said there are four pairs, or 8 in total, things that blow us around in life. They're called the 8 worldly winds. And I think in the 2,500 years since he's taught this, in a number of discourses, there hasn't been a finer list of things that cause suffering or blow us around in life. The 8 worldly winds, and I have made them for you rhyme. That's right. So, starting with the internal, there is pleasure and pain. And life, there are... now, he's not talking about, with pain, he's not talking about the inevitable pains of sickness or of growing old. He's talking about that we have a physical response to a gut reaction to everything in our lives. Sometimes we feel good about what's going on in our lives, and we want that feeling to go forever. And sometimes we have this physical stress that we greet life with, a gut feeling of, oh no. Sometimes when you're during the day and you're comfortable and you're relaxed and the phone rings and you're like, oh good, the phone. I wonder who that could be. And then sometimes you're stressed out and there's so much in life and why won't they leave me alone, and you're all tight, and then the phone rings and you're like, God damn it! Fuck them all. Those people that won't leave me alone. It's the same sensation. It's a phone ringing. It's the same phone, the same sound, the same stimulus, but we're greeting this exact same sensation differently, right? Depending upon what our underlying level of pleasure or pain is. So the more that we understand that these underlying states are that there's going to be stress and there's going to be states of relaxation. But if we attach to what the Buddha referred to them as Vedana, that means your gut feelings. If you attach to the feelings when you're feeling really good, everything's great. If you attach to that feeling, you are setting yourself up for when you inevitably have those feelings of stress that return. So understand that the body is going to have a set of different responses to life. Yes, once you see which state you're in, you can relax the body using the breath. But first, understand that to a certain degree, these states are going to happen. If you overly attach to pleasure and push away pain, you're going to bring more suffering to life than you're going to bring happiness. So that's the first group. The second group is loss and gain, which means basically all the material goods you own, your bank account, if you're lucky enough to have a 401k or whatever they're calling it these days. Of course, if you attach to that, there's inevitably going to be a letdown. I read this great study, this clinical study, where it said that when businessmen make their first million, they get a huge bounce up in short-term happiness, and then it recedes. And then to get the same amount of happiness bump, they have to get something like $5 million, and it goes up exponentially. So to get the same amount of happiness from money, you've got to basically be, doing pretty well. I mean, the chances are it's not going to last, because eventually the amount of money you're going to have to make to fill that hole in you is going to be pretty astronomical. It's generally, to give you an idea of how astronomical, I heard a great quote by Ringo Starr, who said that, throughout his life, he had a great amount of self-loathing and low self-esteem, which is why he drank so much. And even when the Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's, it was 1967, he had more money than he could possibly ever spend. He had more houses than he could live in. He had more groupies than you could imagine, and more drugs at his disposal, and more sensual pleasures than you could possibly imagine. It wasn't enough to fill that hole. It wasn't enough. But he tried. He tried until he nearly drank himself to death and used himself to death. That's what happens when we constantly chase gain and chase pleasure. That the Buddha had a great quote. He said, "The world isn't enough. The world isn't enough to fill that sense of lack in us, that sense of a hole. You can't fill that with the things in the world." So, pleasure and pain, loss and gain, and then there's obscurity and fame. I was reaching there a little bit, but obscurity and fame, that's on a social level, wanting everybody to know who you are, wanting to have a lot of friends on Friendsters, having a MySpace page. Oh my God, I have a Twitter feed and 3,000 people are subjecting themselves to my every little whim. I just looked in the refrigerator and made myself a sandwich. Those of you who don't have Twitter, believe me. So there's a desire to be loved by everyone with the hope that will fill us up. The problem is that we need more and more people to constantly love us, and unfortunately, again, then we become subjected to the whims of the fickle public. Yes, I framed that sentence beautifully, didn't I? The whims of the fickle public. You can't write this stuff, my friend. So, and finally, moving into praise and blame. Again, that's a variation of obscurity and fame, but it's more on the level of your friends, or somebody trying to get that one person in your life to really love what you're doing, love who you are, accept who you are. We're constantly looking for that sense of other people think we're okay. So all these are the winds that blow us around. And the Buddha said, not only to understand that, but there's a couple of strategies we can use to make life much more pleasurable for us. I'm going to read you a quote by the Buddha, and I'm going to give you some of his tactics. Knowing these winds that blow us around, the wise person, ever mindful, ponders that these are changing conditions. In other words, the wise person knows that if he attaches to any of these things, they are going to change. Desirable things thus don't charm the mind. And what he means by that is that we don't get dazzled by it. Every time something goes well in our job, or well with people like a performance, or like some song we've done, or like a piece of art we've done, or like something that we've done, we accept it and we feel good, but we also know that if we over-attach, that there's going to be times when we're not going to get that praise. We're not going to get that, success in work. So we're not bedazzled. There's always a sense of temperance. And knowing this, the wise person attains a state of no suffering. He goes to a place where there is a safe shore. And I'll talk about where that place is. But first, the Buddha, in some other suttas, talks about using these states that pass wisely, which means, for example, if you've been lucky in life and you've attained some money and life has been good, give it all to your Dharma teacher. He'll spend it wisely. No. No, I don't accept money for teaching. It's just to use your money in a way that you will later on in life look back and feel good about. There's a study, a clinical study you can read about, where in graduate school they gave people $10. And they told half of the people to spend the $10 on, give it to a stranger, and tell the stranger to spend it on whatever they want. And the other half were told to spend it on themselves. And I think it was 3 months later, I might be wrong, it might be 6 months, but it was a period of time later, they asked the people who spent it on themselves if they could remember what they spent it on. Nobody could, and not a single one of them had a bump up in their sense of self-worth. But the people who spent the $10, gave it away to a stranger, not only could remember the situation that they gave the money away, they could remember the person, and they had a significant bump for a while in their sense of self-esteem. So there's this understanding that while we don't attach to what people think about us, if we act generously, if we use our money in a way that is not just simply spending it on Barney's or whatever we like to spend it on, but we also have a sense of generosity, there's a great chance that that fleeting state of gain that we've experienced will last much longer than if we simply use the gain selfishly. So, to be wise with how we, with what we do with our acclaim, with what we do with our gain, with what we do with our praise. If we get praise, to share it with somebody who's helped us. If we get fame, to use it to help somebody else who we think could use it. That's the kind of strategic in the layperson suttas the Buddha is talking about. So, and next he said, when we experience praise or fame, ask ourselves if it's real or if it's coming from a source that's delusional. The Buddha taught as much as possible to hang around with wise spiritual practitioners, people who just don't shower us with praise just because we got out of bed in the morning or because we buttoned our shirts correctly. But to make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people who are encouraging us and are both warmly encouraging us, but also at the same time not saying yes to all of our worst ideas or our worst tendencies. To be wise when we are enjoying this praise or this gain, to make sure that it's based on something real. And the Buddha said the safest way to do that is to surround ourselves with spiritual people, not people who are caught up in trying to chase money or spiritual or sensual pleasures, or just a lot of friends. Finally, there is an internal foundation that is unconditional. There is a way to cultivate happiness that is not fleeting. That's if this path was simply about disattaching to the outside world, but there wasn't something else to attach to, then it would be a very dry path. It would be a very, it would be, in fact, Westerners who first encountered Buddhism made this classic mistake and thought that Buddhism was this very dire, depressing thing because it taught that everything in the outside world was largely beyond our control and impermanent, and oh, woe is me, what a black, depressing spiritual practice. But no, the Buddha, and in fact the people of Southeast Asia and other countries that practice Buddhism tend to be extremely optimistic and extremely happy because the Buddha taught that there is an unconditional source of happiness and peace of mind that you have in this lifetime. It's not dependent upon a God. It's not dependent upon an afterlife. It's not dependent upon anything beyond your control. It's totally there, available to you no matter how much money you have, no matter how old you are, no matter where you live. It is available. It is cultivated by bringing a sense of compassion, a sense of appreciation, a sense of gentleness to your relationship with what's going on inside of you, your inner sensations, your feelings, your thoughts. To learn to change the thoughts that are causing you suffering to thoughts that bring you lasting peace. For example, thoughts of generosity and gratitude for what you have in life. Throughout these teachings, the Buddha emphasized the ability to look inwards without any reference to the outside world. For example, often when we eat, we just eat because really quickly, unaware of what we're eating, because we think that everybody gets to eat, there's food everywhere. What's the big deal? We bring this sense of entitlement and this lack of wonder about how amazing it is that this food winds up in front of us to begin with. We bring this knowledge that in the outside world there's lots of food, blah, 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 so what's so special about it? But if we actually focused on the amazing fact that nowadays virtually, anybody who's got, a lot of, not everybody in the world, there's a lot of people who are starving, but we can at any time we want eat. That throughout history was not actually the conditions. We forget about how amazing it is to have a human mind. It's the most powerful tool in the universe. It's the equivalent of millions of supercomputers, chained together. It took them years and years and years just to build a computer that could play somebody in chess. And only the most advanced supercomputer even has a chance against a grandmaster. The human mind is an amazing thing. At any moment, it can visualize or remember, bring up, memories and feelings and thoughts that are stored away for years that we haven't thought. So to bring a sense of appreciation and gratitude for what the sensations of being alive. The Buddha said that having a human birth is one of the rarest states there is. And yet we take so much of this for granted. To appreciate the things that we've done for others, rather than to bring us an agenda of always what I don't have. Oh, I would be happy if only I had this, if only I had more acclaim, if only I had a bigger place to live, if only my boyfriend or girlfriend was more complimentary, if only my roommate didn't leave the towels in the bathroom, on the floor, whatever. Instead, bring a sense of reflection of all the generosity, all the skillful things we've done, a sense of focusing on what life has brought us. These are the kinds of thoughts and the kinds of attitudes that bring us lasting happiness, that can always be there. You don't need to have an external condition or the right people around you to reflect on skillful things that you've done. You don't need any external condition to cultivate thoughts that bring about lasting peace of mind. And finally, of course, the Buddha talked about practicing equanimity, which is understanding that in the case of people that we love or people that we feel good about, that there's only so much that we can do. That at the end of the day, everybody's happiness is contingent upon their own actions. And our happiness is contingent upon our own actions. And if right now we're suffering, chances are it's due to a previous expectation, a previous action, a previous what we've been focusing on in the past. It will pass. But to bring that understanding that suffering is the result of our actions, and the suffering in others is the result of their actions. And trading our own internal peace, trying to help another being, is not a good trade, because still somebody winds up suffering. So you only help as much as you can without endangering your own serenity, your own peace of mind. So, those are the 8 worldly winds and some of the strategies of how to go about enjoying life as a human being. Next week I'm going to return to thoughts that cause us suffering, a new list, as if you needed a new list of thoughts that cause you suffering, but I'm sure you think you know them all by now. And some thoughts that we haven't talked about that bring lasting happiness. So I hope that this was of some use, and now we go to you for shares and questions and stuff like that. All the way in the back.
Yeah, I have a question. If you're constantly reminded that everything is transient and, couldn't that be depressing in a way because you can't really enjoy life in a way because you're saying you can't attach to this feeling of happiness because it's external?
I think if the only way you can be happy is by attaching, which I don't believe is the truth, right, then that would be true. But for instance, when you watch a sunset, that's particularly beautiful, right? You know that it's going to pass in 20 minutes. And there's no sense of disappointment when it passes because you know that it's passing. When you go to a museum and you see a beautiful painting, you know that you only have a certain amount of time to stand before that painting and enjoy it before you have to move on. But you still get enjoyment from it. You still like looking at sunsets or going to museums or, hopefully when you have sex, you're aware that it will probably end at some point. Maybe not. But I think we actually are aware of that much more often than we give ourselves credit. It's just that there are certain areas in life where we don't understand that it's fleeting, and that we tend to bring in this extra sense of this is where I'm going to get my true peace of mind from. I'm going to get my peace of mind not from the inside work I do, accepting myself, bringing myself better thoughts, calming myself, focusing on relaxing my body. I'm going to instead make myself feel good by through my career. And of course, there's going to come a time if you do that, no matter how great your career is, when it's going to end. And a lot of people do that. They become workaholics. The only way they can turn off their mind and get internal peace is through their jobs. A lot of people get dire health prognosis as cancer, and the first thing they do is they go back to work the next day, because that's the only way over life they've trained themselves to turn off their minds, to stop worrying. And if you think about that, wow, right? I mean, it's great that, work turns off their minds, lets them focus, and they don't worry when they're at their jobs. But on the other hand, if that's the only way, if that's your chief way of achieving peace of mind, what are you going to do when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And you can't be at work. So we've got to have an unconditional source of happiness that's there even when it's the middle of the night and you can't work, you can't skateboard, you can't rock climb, you can't bike, you can't do yoga, you can't, it has to be something there that's giving us a true sense of purpose no matter what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Sure. Hey.
So, it's my first time here. It was great. I liked it.
Oh, thanks.
One thing that I've always thought about, I've learned about Buddhism in the past, and especially with tonight's discussion, was if being so attached to physical things and like the experiences that we have in life lead to unhappiness, and because things change so much, that what really exists besides like virtues and like love and compassion and things like that, and are those the only true way to happiness? Because everything that we think that really exists, we're not really sure if it does because it changes. So what is it like concretely?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Buddha listed a lot more than you would think in terms of factors that lead to lasting happiness. I mean, besides the 3 G's, goodwill, generosity towards others, gratitude, there's also cultivating appreciation for skillfulness, things that you've done. There's, having a core sense of values. For instance, I'm sure that even if I came up to you and I offered you $1 million to kill somebody, right? You wouldn't take it. Hopefully you wouldn't. Yeah. We'll pretend you wouldn't take it. Maybe we should use another example. No, all right. So you've got something that's worth more than $1 million. You've got, you won't kill. Even if somebody offered you untold riches, you wouldn't kill. So you have something that's invaluable. That's a source of great inner sense of appreciation, a sense of self-worth. There's also cultivating with mindfulness, developing an ability to experience bliss and serenity through working with the breath, working with body sensations, relaxing through the way you breathe, calming the mind and the body fabrication the Buddha taught. So that's another source of happiness. There's 10 paramis, or sources of goodwill. There's also, I could go on, but
But if that makes you happy, isn't that building up your ego and being egotistical, and like you're building up this idea of like a self, when in fact, like emptiness is like getting rid of the idea of the self and just like embracing that.
Right.
Because we're constantly changing, so who are we?
Right.
Type of thing.
Well, the Buddha never taught that there wasn't a self. He said that there's not a self that you can identify, but he said that right now there's a self, and there's a you and there's a me, right? It's just that if we try to have a core, the teaching of anatta is basically that there's no core identity that you can point to that lasts at all. There's a tendency that we want to say, well, I'm a happy person, I'm a sad person, I'm a smart person, I'm a funny person, I'm a this person. And all those things that we point to and say, that's who I am, they tend to change. I'm not, no matter how funny I want to be, I'm not funny all the time. No matter how smart I want to be, I say stupid shit. No matter how, compassionate I want to be, I can be mean, right? The whole of humanity passes through us. So if we try to have any lasting identity, we're setting ourselves up for suffering. But right now, at this moment in time, you can have a sense of self-esteem based on acts that you've done that are skillful, generous things that you said to other people or done for other people, compassionate things that you've done, the ability to feel appreciation for when others are happy. So that doesn't go. In fact, the Buddha, before he taught anatta, if you look earlier in the Dhammapada, there's a whole teaching on the self, where he says, yes, we have a self that we should guard over, that we should take care of. It's just that he didn't say it was a lasting self. It's a self right now. So you see, it's not lasting. It's just what's happening with you right now. And it's very important that you feel good about yourself right now. Because if you don't, you're going to feel unhappy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Hi.